Hi, my name's Dave. You're watching Make for Others, and in this episode, we're gonna make a Star Wars Boba Fett helmet for my friend George. My friend George is a really good friend, and we've known each other since the first day of college. He's also kind of tough to buy a gift for. Sure, his favorite band is Rush, and he likes to play the guitar, but he also has all of Rush's songs, and I really don't know that much about guitar stuff. So, when he mentioned that he liked the Boba Fett helmet I made for my son for Halloween, I had my answer. George was going to be surprised with his very own Boba Fett helmet, and a few other things that were made just for him. We covered the helmet stand, wall mount, and the one-of-a-kind t-shirt in different videos, and links to those are down below. For this, the first thing I did was bring my son's helmet to work to show George and get him to wear it so I could see how it would fit without him knowing what I was planning on doing. Did I mention that one of the guys I've been friends with for a long time also happens to work at the same place I do? It's pretty cool. Almost as cool as George. Anyway, my son's helmet is a standard adult size, which is a bit big for him right now. But, like most fathers, I want him to be able to wear this interstellar bounty hunter helmet for years to come. On George, it fit perfectly. From there, I used the templates made by Propmaster Robert Walker. They're available for free online, and he has a comprehensive video build series that I'll link to below. His templates and videos are great, so if you're interested in building your own, I highly recommend them. The son and I cut all the templates and traced them onto EVA foam, which is the fancy name for those interlocking exercise mats. Then the foam was cut with a utility knife and then glued together with a really strong contact cement. The contact cement gets put on both parts. You wait about 25 minutes for them to dry, and then put the pieces together for a really, really strong hold. We repeated those steps for all the parts, and once it was assembled, I used a heat gun to seal up all the really tiny cells in the foam, which will make it easier to paint in future steps. A decent amount of spackle and some sanding were done to touch up the parts that weren't as smooth as they could be. This step should have been done way later, but I got ahead of myself. Part of the helmets where the visor would go got cut, with some areas of the foam staying to keep the shape of the helmet. Otherwise, because it's foam and not a rigid plastic or some other material, it would open up where big cuts got made, and that would make it tougher to put on the visor. A protective screen that usually gets put on safety helmets was cut to size and then glued on, with a thin sheet of craft foam cut and put on top of it all. The templates for what I like to call the helmet's ears were cut and then traced on the 1/4-inch plywood, which then got cut on my tiny bandsaw in the garage. Anytime I'm using a bandsaw, table saw, circular saw, or anything with a blade, or anything dangerous, I'm always careful and use safety precautions, always. More of the contact cement got used. We waited a while, and then they got put on. The wood on the sides also adds a little more structure and causes the helmet to not flare out as much at the bottom. One of the big changes from the templates is my use of printed parts that were made available online by some awesome 3D modelers. Links down below for those parts. A friend kindly printed all of them out for me, and then I went about cleaning them up. Cleaning up meant taking off the build support that the printer had done. Depending on how complex the shape you print, it will have more or less support. This step takes time, but is definitely worth it when you need parts that will take much longer to make by hand. Blue tape got put on both sides of the visor to stop it from getting scratched up or damaged during the rest of the build. Since the helmet's right ear is split into two parts, I just needed to sand down the lower part a little bit so it was flush to the bottom of the helmet. The left ear was a different story. Since I didn't have a 3D modeling program at the time, and that ear part was pretty much the same shape except for the top and bottom, I just had it printed twice and cut the bottom off of one and the top off of the other. I promise I've got more light by my bandsaw than it looks like in this footage. Some contact cement, 25 minutes of waiting, putting them on, and unless you watch this video, you won't know that this piece was actually two parts. Also, I know that the side parts aren't called ears. These pieces and every other piece of this pretend helmet have actual names, but I'm pretty sure if I said too many of these names out loud, my wife would find me less attractive. A thin strip of craft foam got glued on, and then the back part of the helmet, called the rear vent, was worked on. Some more sandpaper got used, and the Dremel tool dug in to make the iconic dents. After cutting a decent amount of foam away, I changed bits to one that gave me more control. The last thing I want to do at this point is accidentally go all the way through. The top of the helmet is still a little pointy where the foam parts were glued together, so I removed additional material to round it out more. George is typically the tallest person in any room, so the top of the helmet won't get seen by many people. I'm not too worried about it. Plus, at our age, you don't make fun of someone because their homemade costume doesn't look exactly like the original. And actually, that's not really an age thing. There's better things to do with your time than making fun of people, like eating bacon, or eating kale if you're a vegetarian. Anyway, 5 coats of Modge Podge gives a great layer of protection, seals the foam, and makes painting easier in later steps. There are other sealing options like Plastidip spray, but this is a small piece that won't be bending or flexing, and I'll probably be sanding it during future steps. So for those reasons, Modge Podge is a great, inexpensive option. Even though I'm using a foam brush, you'll still be able to see the brush strokes. But since Boba Fett's helmet is more than a little messed up, the brush strokes will actually give the helmet more personality. I put a piece of cardboard on the cake spinner just in case we end up needing to make an actual cake. This isn't likely since we're more of a pie and cobbler family, but I always hold out hope when it comes to cake. The triangles on the forehead could have been painted on later, but cutting them in added some extra dimension. For the parts that are supposed to look like metal, I used a metallic paint pen because I like the look. It's really easy to control, and it was too cold that night to spray paint outside. The rangefinder stock piece gets covered at the bottom by another part of the ear I call the ear cap. And since the stock might need to get tightened every now and then, I wanted that cap to be removable. So, magnets got used to connect it to the helmet. The cap and the base of the ear got drilled at the same time, so the fit would be perfect. The placement of the magnets was based on where there was room for them, and also far enough away from each other to keep the cap firmly in place. With 2 holes to drill and a level of precision needed so both sets of magnets lined up perfectly, I drilled a hole all the way through both of them and started the second hole, with the first drill bit staying in the first hole, so nothing moved around. From there, I increased the size of the holes with a drill bit in whichever hole I wasn't widening at the time, so everything stayed lined up. This takes a little while, but I only had to do it once, and compared to other steps in the process, this step would have taken a lot longer to fix if I hadn't done it well the first time. After that, it was time for the first round of primer. A few problem areas turned up after that, so there was some more spackle and sanding, and then it got another round of primer. By this time, the tape on the visor was looking a little bit ragged, so I replaced it. The main color is green, so I sprayed that on the outside of the whole helmet and then let it dry for about a day. I definitely recommend checking the dry times on your paints and add some more time to that if you can, just to be safe. Humidity and temperature really make an impact, so try and give yourself plenty of time. More masking and then red spray paint. Another day of drying, more masking, and then gold spray paint. Masking can take a lot of time to do, and then you remove it as soon as possible so the paint doesn't have a chance to dry and make it all stick together. But masking is definitely worth the effort. While waiting for the helmet to dry, the ear cap got spackled, sanded, primed, and painted too. The rangefinder that goes on the end of the stock got painted and then assembled. George's wife Jody was in on the surprise, so when I asked her for a picture of her for the surprise, she wasn't weirded out by the request. Which is good since I like to avoid weirding people out. Her picture got printed at slightly different sizes, and the best fit got glued in and then covered with a couple of coats of Modge Podge for protection. The template for the stripes on the left side of the helmet got cut out, traced on the blue tape, and then that got put onto the helmet. Since Boba Fett's stripes are a bit dinged up from all of his countless Star Wars, masking fluid got put on in some areas to achieve that effect. This stuff is kinda like glue, but still stays tacky enough for easy removal after you're done using it as a mask. After a base coat of white paint to make sure these stripes would pop, a few different colors got sprayed so there would be a gradient from front to back. Then all the masking material got removed. After a day of drying, I took it home and hand painted the black because it was easy to do for these areas, and I was also getting a little tired of masking. Even with decent masking, some of the areas needed to be touched up, so the spray paint got sprayed into bowls and then brushed on. I learned quickly that the paints liked to eat the bowls I had available. Since I wasn't able to go get bowls of a different material, a paper towel got put into the next one, and since it soaked up too much paint, aluminum foil got put into the one after that. The foil worked best, and all the touch-ups got done without any more bowls being eaten by paint. The triangles got painted by hand with a tiny brush, and then all the graphics and symbols on the helmet got drawn or painted on too. All these little details add up, so just like every other step, it's worth taking your time and doing it as good as possible the first time. And if you're nervous, just practice on another surface until you build up some confidence to work on your final piece. The tape on the visor got taken off for the final time, a few more details got taken care of, and then all the battle damage got done. There are a bunch of different ways to do this step. Actually, you could say that for all the steps in this project. Drawing the damage on with the paint pen I'd used earlier was the way that worked best for me. Once a rangefinder got put on, the helmet was good to go. All we had to do now was take it for a test run. Actually, we took it for a test walk. A test dog walk. The last thing before wrapping up all the surprises for George was writing him a note, letting him know that I'm thankful for him as a friend. If you don't have the time to make a Boba Fett helmet for one of your good friends, a quick note or email or text or saying something to their face are all really good options. People appreciate it when you let them know you're thankful for them. Now it's time for George to get his surprises.
Just from you?
Oh,
thanks.
Straight up. Straight up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Look at that Boba Fett
I
helmet.
know, you're excited.
Big day. Did you make this?
Yeah.
Epic.
Your wife helped me with another thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Is there a picture in there?
That's Jody gave me that picture. So that way you can always see Jody.
Boba George.
So the reality is you probably can't wear that all the time.
You don't think?
So if you don't like this stand, if you and Jody don't want it like on a table somewhere,
Like in our living room?
you may not want it there.
Is this like a wall?
It's an invisible wall mount. So then you just
But I can see it.
well, but as soon as you put the helmet on, it goes away. So then it just looks like Boba Fett's floating. His helmet itself.
I love it. No, the stand is perfect.
I'm really happy with how this turned out. Now, there's still some seams that you can see if the light hits it just right on the top, but the good news is George is really tall, so when he's walking around wearing this, you're not gonna be able to see that. If you learned something new or are encouraged to make something for someone you know, or you just have questions, leave a comment down below. Would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.
What in the heck?
We don't know.
Is there a person in there?
I don't think so.
Is it his birthday?
No, I like double checked. It's for Dave Little.
It's for Dave Little.
Yeah, that
yeah.
seems like a Dave
It's
Little
a
thing.
prank.
It's just so elaborate and
Yeah.
hilarious. It's Dave Little written all over it. Unless it's not, and then it's you.